Hello, my name is James, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but this is episode 2 of This Is How I Did That. Special thank you goes out to everyone that liked my last video and sent me some very nice messages. Much love, many thanks. In today's episode, I'm going to explain how I did this, which was this ballet dance themed shoot that I did late last year. And I'm going to go through step by step the exact process I used, much like the last video. So here we go. So step 1, how did this all come about and what was the concept for this shoot? So a friend of mine, Alison, very talented lady. She's a professional dancer, a choreographer, a Pilates instructor. The list of things this woman does goes on and on and on. Anyway, she's just opened up her first dance studio in Alexandria. I will put a link below. Me and her were talking about getting, some images for the studio done, where she wanted photos that would really help promote her business, look really good on social media, and also would help show, the teachers that were teaching classes, different styles, the studio, everything that she would need, basically. I went away, came back with a few different ideas, put together some mood boards for a ballet style shoot. Alison really loved them, and Alison has 2 extremely talented instructors that teach ballet with her in the form of Amber and Jade. They really loved the idea. The stars aligned, planets collided, Mercury wasn't in retrograde, Venus was moving forward. You get the idea, we were good to go. So that meant we had the initial idea, we had the initial building blocks of a shoot, and it meant that I could create a concept. And the concept was that I wanted to create photos that would really kind of tick all the boxes that Alison needed. So I wanted to create really dynamic images, very professional, very unique. But also I wanted to create images that kind of displayed that traditional aspect of ballet, that romantic idea of ballet, and all those characteristics that you think of, like, poise, grace, beauty, but also strength and technique. And that kind of created the framework for this shoot. And from there I was able to create mood boards, I was creating different looks and ideas, and I was kind of piecing together what I thought would make this look perfect. And that's how the concept got created for this shoot. So now that I had the framework of a concept and of a shoot, I began to think about, okay, well, what kind of lighting am I thinking? Do I want to shoot this on location, or do I want to shoot it in a studio? And is there anything that I can add that's going to help elevate this shoot to another level? Just another piece that's going to help add something unique to it, basically. And in my head, I already knew the lighting I wanted. I wanted very soft lighting, similar to, those images where there's like a warehouse that's got a huge hole in the ceiling and you get this really soft, beams of sunlight shining through. It was going to be initially on location, but after a while we just decided that it would be best to shoot it in a studio. And in terms of elevating to another level, I thought I would introduce a little bit of color. And the reason why is because the background was going to be white and each ballet teacher was going to be wearing black. So by adding a little bit of color, the idea that I had would be that it would separate the dancers from the background. And to do that, I introduced some material into this shoot. Now, I'm not the first person to do this, I don't claim to be, but I wanted to put my own little spin on it, my own ideas, and also kind of create something that was quite unique. So when you're using material, there's a couple of big advantages for a shoot like this. So number 1, it'll help separate the ballet dancer from the background. So it just creates something a bit more unique, a little bit more color. Like it's just like a splot of color, like, a painter's brush, so to speak. And that is actually the effect I was going for. So that's number 1. Number 2, speaking of that painter's brush, you do get some beautiful patterns and some shapes and some lines, and that works perfectly for ballet because especially with like the jump poses and even like the static poses, you know, it helps just kind of really build on that image that I'm looking to create. Now, typically you've got two choices that you can use for material. So one is this kind of satin material here. Now this gold satin material is quite heavy. So what it means is that when the dancer, you know, jumps in the air, or when they just kind of fling it in the air, they use a lot of power to do it. And when the light hits it from the flash, you get some really dynamic shadow. You get a lot of really beautiful lighting, especially with gold as the primary color here. But also you get a lot more kick to this photo. It's a bit more of a dynamic image. And you can use that with the different poses and the different looks you're going for, as opposed to this one here. This I believe is called chiffon. It's a bit more of a lighter material. Hope I got that right. And this does a bit more of the opposite, where it kind of really floats and you get those really lovely patterns. It's not as dynamic, but it's a lot more organic. And it really creates these really lovely curved lines, and it really looks like it's just gliding in the air. And that's because it's lighter, and you know, when the ballet dancer just jumps and they kind of fling it, you really see it just gliding through the air. And that's what I was after here, because it created two different types of looks per ballet teacher. Now, a few tips. Number one, if you are going to buy material, go to a material store. That helps. There's so much selection and the prices are pretty good. I bought 3 different types and it didn't even cost me $40, which is really good. Number 2, don't just buy 1 meter. 1 meter is not enough. 1 meter will not give you that full flowing effect that you might be after, and that I was after. I wanted it to really cover the frame. I purchased at least, I think it was between 3 to 4 meters, and that makes a big difference because, you know, I don't know about you, but I don't want to be mucking around in Photoshop, cloning, making extra lengths of material, and I don't want to be like sacrificing my integrity to an AI god, you know, saying, hey, please make this material bigger. You know, that's not what I want to be doing. If you can get it first time right in camera, life's a lot easier. Also, don't be afraid to use maybe 1 or 2 different colors. So with the look that Amber has, she's got 2 pieces of material which are very similar tones, that kind of purple and that pink or fuchsia, I think that's the correct color name. So don't be afraid to use something similar. You don't always have to use opposites, but just really think about the colors that you're going to be using, because that color, that's important, because that's what's going to really separate the ballet teacher from the background. And it's just almost, it does kind of really look like a painter's brush in many ways. So the colors are important that you pick. If you're stuck, a color wheel will make your life a lot easier, and it's as simple as that. So in terms of lighting, I've done this a little bit differently than I would normally. So typically, if I was doing a normal photo shoot, I might have a beauty dish, or I might have like a softbox or an octabox to the side, you know, and that's because the person is like dead on in front of me, you know, typical portrait scenario, and they're, you know, either standing straight or sitting straight, etc. Anytime you shoot with kind of live action, dancers, performers, etc., it's a little bit different. And as such, I'm using 2 lights for this setup. The first light is a deep umbrella, and it's a massive one. I think it's 160 centimeters. Now, I'm not really a huge fan of these kind of deep umbrellas, to be honest with you, but in this case it works really well because I don't have a big studio to work with, and I want to create a lot of soft light that's diffused, and I want it to be spread across a big area. And that's what it's done. So this massive umbrella is elevated to a good well, as high as the light stand will go, plus the umbrella. So it's what, about maybe 2.5, 3 meters in the air, whatever. And it is very much close to the action. So it's almost just above the ballet dancer, but it's on a slight angle going down. And the reason why I've done that is simple. Because, as I said, if you ever photograph dancers, or if you ever watched a performance, or even like, live action, right? Typically people are jumping in the air, the limbs are all the way extended, but also the neck and the head is often looking at the ceiling. So if you've got a light coming from the side like this and someone's doing this, it doesn't always work very well. With the light that's coming down in this way, and a really beautiful soft light because it's double diffused, it is able to illuminate the face really lovely, but also you get all the muscle tone. So the shoulders, the legs, they're stretched out to max. All that muscle tone, all those limbs get illuminated perfectly. So that's light number 1. Light number 2 is a strip box that I have pretty much all the way out to the side. And the reason why I've done that is because what happens is, typically when you are working with people that are doing like live action, they are going to jump from left to right. So if you've got that one light shining down, it'll capture them as they're elevated or looking up to the ceiling. But if you've got another light coming from here and shining this way, it'll fill in all those shadows. And that's what the goal of this strip box was. Now, this strip box was a rather large one. It was 163 centimeters, I think it is, or 165 centimeters. So it's pretty big. The only reason I'm using that one is because it's the only one I own. It's as simple as that. The advantage is that it covers the same height roughly as the 2 ballet teachers that I'm working with. But you don't need to use a strip box that large. You could use 190 centimeters, 120 centimeters, whatever you've got really. But I've positioned mine a fair way out, probably about 2, maybe 3 meters away, just so the light gets a little bit more softer as it's a fill. The main light is that top down one, and that's coming in the side. Now, I was actually going to use another light on the other side, but I decided against it because when I tried it, I found that the material didn't appear as nice as I wanted it to look. It was too overexposed. But in saying that though, I still think it's always better to bring the extra light, because if you need it, it's there in your bag. If you don't need it, well, no problem, it stays in your bag. And it's always good to bring a spare if you've got one. So typically when you're photographing someone, they might be standing in front of you or sitting down in front of you. You might be like, oh, okay, do this, do that, like turn your body a little bit this way, or like, lean your head back, lower your chin, blah, 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 blah. But in this case, that wasn't going to happen, because really both Amber and Jade know a lot more about ballet than I do, and I ever will. And it would be a mistake, I think, if you put your ego first as opposed to listening to people. So the way I did this shoot was a little bit different, where I would show them the different poses and they'd be like, yeah, nah, yeah, nah. And then I just said, look, well, what's a really cool jump pose that you like? Or what's a really cool static pose that you like? And each of them said, oh, look, this looks really cool. And they would demonstrate it, and I'd be like, okay, perfect, let's do that. From there, they would do a pose, like a jump pose, and I would go, okay, instead of you looking at me, I want you to look directly into that light that's on the side. So that way it kind of became, in terms of ballet, the right form, but in terms of photography, the right look. And you kind of really want to work with people for something like this, in my opinion. Also, ballet dancers are extraordinarily technical, as I found out. So this split pose here that I'm showing on screen, this one had to be reshot, I think, 2 or 3 times. And I remember it because when I saw it, I was like, wow, that looks really cool. And I showed it to the guys, and they were like, look, yeah, it looks really cool, but my leg isn't in the right position, my toes aren't in the right position. And it's important to understand that it's not just about the photo looking good when you're doing these poses. It's about things looking technically good and technically perfect. And that's really important, as I discovered, for ballet. So don't be afraid to really listen to people, especially when they have more knowledge on the subject than, well, I would. And it's as simple as that. So in terms of equipment used for this shoot, as I said in my last video, you don't need to spend a lot of money on the most modern photography gear to pull something like this off. So for this shoot, I have used my trusty Nikon D850. I had a few other choices that I could use, but for this one, that was the camera of choice. I really love using that camera for the moment, and it's just still delivering great results. The one thing I've done differently was use a wide angle lens in the form of 35mm. So 35mm is a great focal length to use, especially if you're working in a smaller studio and you want to capture as much of the scene as you can. That will give you a little bit more to play with. So what I mean by that is, if someone's jumping from left to right, like a ballet dancer's leaping in the air, and all that material is floating in the background, you'll capture all of that with 35mm in most cases, 90% to 100% of it for sure. It meant that I had room to play with if I wanted to crop, and I think for a shoot like this where you're trying to capture the entire frame, it's a good focal length to use. 50 in a smaller space can be a bit tight. 85, which is my preferred length, was just not going to happen. Obviously, if you're in a bigger studio, that's what makes life easy. You've got plenty of choices, but in a tighter space, 35mm I think is the way to go. And that's it. Episode 2 of This Is How I Did That. Special thanks goes out to Alison. As I said, there'll be a link below if you do want to learn to dance and you live in Sydney. Amber and Jade teach there as well. Thank you both for being part of this shoot. If you want to book me for a shoot, give me a call. Doesn't matter if you've got a crazy idea. I'll talk about it with you and go from there. And yeah, I hope someone out there found this helpful. And if you've got questions, just send me a message. Enjoy. Have a lovely night. See you later. Bye-bye.